Good sign. Good sign. 1, 2, 3. Good sign. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll gather that up.
Now, give me a second because I'm about to sneeze.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. It was a
Okay.
short one. Sometimes it can be 5 in a row.
Oh boy. I do one large one that shakes the windows. All
Oh,
right.
the cat visitor.
Welcome, welcome to Threats from Gallifrey. We're here to talk to Vicky and Bob Beaver, the masterminds of Obatron Productions, who have successfully funded their savage setting, the horror fantasy game Retribution. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you very much. We appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you today. So does our company mascot.
Yay! So, which character has the cat inspired in the game?
Well, that's yet to be seen. I actually have a short story that's this one, and it just not quite in the same form.
So you've funded. You're at over $1,700 out of $1,000 goal to make this happen. How does it feel having funded and to be so close to double funded? I mean, what's going through your minds at this point?
Well, for one thing, it's a bit of validation. It's letting us know that yes, people actually are interested in a supernatural fantasy, that they are willing to try something that's a little bit different. It does have some of the familiar elements of fantasy, elves and dwarves and magic, things of that nature, but it does have more focus on things that only occasionally come up in most fantasy. All of us are probably familiar with our parties fighting the undead. If any of us started with D&D, which a whole lot of us have, we're used to skeletons and we're used to wights and all kinds of things coming at us. But those are generally occasional instances.
Mm-hmm.
In our world, in Retribution, those are not occasional. You constantly are dealing with supernatural entities, whether they are spirits that have come back from the dead, whether they are bodies that have been controlled by necromancers, whether they are extraplanar entities that have come through the tear in the fabric that separates all of the planes, the mortal realm, the undead of the humans and elves, or from worlds that we have no idea what they're even called because we don't speak that language. So that's a good portion of the focus is something that's not the traditional fantasy but set in a traditional fantasy world.
ran Savage Ghostbusters a couple months ago, and you're reminding me of some of the elements of that. I'm like, ooh, if fantasy met Ghostbusters.
Well, it's funny you say that. That's actually something somebody else had mentioned too. Was the idea? So is this Savage Worlds, but Ghostbusters, or is this And they named a couple of other ideas, and I wouldn't say Ghostbusters because while you can certainly play it with a lot of humor and a lot of funny contraptions and things like that, that you could certainly twist it that way if you want. It's more of a gritty feel than what you would expect from Ghostbusters. And when I think of Ghostbusters, I haven't played the Savage Worlds version, but I've watched the original Ghostbusters, and that was to me a fun movie and great concept. But I wouldn't think of Retribution as really being Ghostbuster-y. Not in the sense of what you think of with the movies, at least. Of course, my other half, who is the person who spurred this whole thing, probably has more to say on that.
So, Rob, what would you say about the tone? How would you describe the tone and feel of this game?
Well, it's more. It, my vision of the tone is more that it's kind of traditional fantasy with meets. I guess you could say Ghostbusters, but maybe not without so much the humor because kind of that's what you're doing is going out to get rid of ghosts. But it has, the idea is that it has kind of that, all the sessions I've run has certainly been more setting on the horrific and the building the tension, more so than the funny parts of it.
But are we not? Are we going as far as Cthulhu, as far as nerve wracking, edge of your seats, tension, or are we dialing it back a little bit somewhere else?
I'd say we were short of Cthulhu. Did you have more you want to say?
Well, it's not so much because there's not really world-ending events in this or insanity or anything like that. But I ran a session recently where they go into the into this abandoned city, and it's there's like a buzzing going on through the whole time, all the while they're there. The air is real thick and heavy. There's no wind movement, and they're not knowing what's going on as they're going through these like barren streets that look like they were just instantly abandoned. And it's, but they're not like fighting sanity, the sanity breakdown,
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that.
So
in a similar vein, I ran a session with a different group, and it was after Bob and I had been binge watching Stranger Things, and
mm-hmm.
I did a scenario that was not modeled after, but it was inspired by Stranger Things, and I was surprised and tickled that one of the gentlemen at my table had actually commented within about the first quarter of the 4-hour session that it felt like Stranger Things. And like I said, it wasn't modeled after it. So it wasn't like I was taking an episode I watched and putting it into the game. But there were some things that inspired me to come up with this particular scenario. And I thought it was very cool that this guy, completely with no hints at all from me, came up with that parallel that he felt like it was Stranger Things. And that was pretty cool because it actually was meant to have that kind of creepy, strange feel to it. And for how it felt for me was, I achieved that, yay! That was my goal, and it worked. And I didn't expect anybody to actually say Stranger Things because, like I said, it wasn't actually Stranger Things. But it was pretty neat that this is what this person said was Stranger Things. I'm like, okay, yay!
So what's the roots of this game? How long have you been developing this? Has this been something that's been a pet project for years? Is this something that came up to you while driving from Gen Con last year and you're like, oh my god, I need to spend every waking minute on this? What's the roots? What's just the behind the scenes on this?
Well,
Bob's the ideas guy on this one.
It's not something I've been working on, although it kind of loosely in my own kind of game world where if I'm doing anything homebrew, it's set in. But one of the things I've always kind of bring into the rules is like, when you have resurrection in D&D or other games, it's kind of like there's not, it's just boom, you're back to life. Well, since as a character you can die and come back as a spirit into this, there's now spells that basically rebind your spirit to a body. Notice I say a body and not necessarily your body. So I wanted to put that into the game, so there's actually, when your character dies, you don't have to say, okay, you go get another character sheet and everybody else goes on. It's kind of like, yeah, you come back as a ghost. Now you're playing the spirit of your character.
Or at least it's possible that you are.
Yeah, and you change some abilities around because there's rules on how to do that. And
how common is it? How common is it? Is it as difficult as becoming a herald in Deadlands, or is it much easier to become a spirit in Retribution?
It's easier in Retribution because it's somewhat up to the. I leave a lot of it up to the GM to kind of decide, and the players, because playing in corporal entity can be challenging for some players because you can't interact with the physical world very well. So you got to come up with different ways to solve things, and some players are not going to enjoy that. They want to get to the meat of the the combat or something, and if they're struggling, the GM's got to be able to kind of like them be willing to help and figure ways to have them make rolls to show they can figure out how to use an ability in the situation. So it's something that it's kind of left up to the GM and the players to decide, is this something that they want to do, and then
So
that
there's challenges in interacting with the other party members. You're saying in
yes.
this.
Yeah. So when you first become a spirit, if you're a player character, or even you encounter a young spirit or a newly dead ghost, you have a hindrance of prone to groan. It's complete hindrance, so you get to play it, but you groan loudly in inopportune moments. And there's different things that you're going to have to, like, oh, I want to go scout ahead because I can go through doors. You go through a door and then you groan loudly and give it all away or something. So you got to be willing to play that. But it's there's a lot of problems of interacting because you don't sleep at night. The GMs has got to be able to handle that kind of their little subtle power changes that they can take advantage of. And the GM's got to be ready to handle that. So that's why it's kind of more important for a GM to decide, yes, I want player characters to be spirits and handle this and be prepared to handle it. And for players to realize that, some of your traditional approaches of problem solving may not work.
Yeah, kill it isn't necessarily a good mantra if you are having a hard time actually hitting something. So there are things like that. However, just like with any other kind of character, the more XP you have, the more things that you can do. So there's more things that you can put your points into to allow you to interact with the corporeal world. So as a starting point, yes, it can be difficult playing a spirit. So that kind of balances the idea of, well, why don't we all just play spirits? Well, you could, but if you are novice characters, it's going to be a little difficult for you to do some of the things that you might normally expect to be able to do. So as an answer to that, we do have progression that's available for people who are playing spirits, so that there are times when you are able to physically touch things that are in the world.
There's a whole bunch of Vicky froze, so I can't hear her anymore. Well, maybe I can't hear you anymore either.
I can hear you.
Okay. There's a whole bunch of spiritual edges. So there's a whole new line of edges for playing spirits that give you abilities that are more, things like becoming corporal for a short time period, or corporeal, and things like ghostly visions, so you can scare cause a fright to somebody. There's a psychic scream. So the whole sense of things where you can grow as a spirit, or you can spend the game trying to I want to get back into my body. So now they got to figure out how to preserve your body and get it back to town. And then they don't. Well, do you want to? They decide they don't want to deal with a spirit in the party, and whether you like it or not, and they bind you to another body, and going through that, dealing with that. So there's a lot of different things that can happen with it, but there are a progression if you want to continue playing spirit. There's edges that you'll take, just like any other character.
One of the things you said in your Kickstarter video is that the Necromancers are not necessarily evil, but could potentially be good. How do you guys handle in D&D, the chaotic neutral and all that, and alignment system? Do you have an alignment system into Retribution's thing, or is everybody pretty much on the same level?
I kept it more traditional Savage Worlds for the most part, with modifications for the spirits and how to handle that. And I did that. I didn't put into any, just like Savage Worlds. I don't.
Right. I was just thinking about the setting and how people relate to each other.
I kind of took out the whole. There is not really orcs are not inherently bad or anything like that. They're somewhat barbaric, but they interact with society just like any other. There's not really as much of the, that's evil, I'm going to go kill it, versus, or this race is always bad and this one's always good, or anything like that. It's more of and even the spirits, oh, there's a spirit in this town. Well, it might turn out that it's not, an evil spirit. It's actually a good spirit who's just trapped there and wants out. So there's not really it's a very gray
So that's where the
environment.
unjailers come in.
Yes. Necromancers are kind of like, they certainly, could be evil, but they might not be. They may be just, oh, well, we're trying to figure out, how they're coming across, or we're trying to learn this so we can try to repair this rip in the fabric and make it all go away. Um, so there are many different reasons why, you might, as a necromancer, you might want to, you kind of have power over the dead, so it might help you dealing with them versus, so you might use your powers for good versus necessarily I'm going to make as much zombies and take over the world type thing.
How have you had it with playtesting and running on these? I know you've done it on Savage Sundays and stuff. Of the different of the party members getting along and working together with this. When you have necromancers working with orcs, working with spirits, how have you found that working out?
It's
For mine, I've had a lot of really good interactions and people getting creative and not being stuck on the whole idea of necromancers raise the dead, orcs are bad. I've had people play the orcs just brilliantly and have a lot of fun. Actually, the session that I was referring to that had the Stranger Things feel to it. Two of the guys played orcs, and they did the whole, let's really play Savage Worlds with its strengths and do some really, out of the box things. There was a stalactite that they had managed to get onto and had been scaling in order to attack something that was hiding in the darkness above them. In the meantime, something big and bad and horrific was coming out of the darkness below them toward the rest of the party, and they didn't know it. So it showed up. They came up with this really cool idea. One of the guys looked at the other and said, hey, how about you jump down off of this stalactite and try to get on this guy's back, because this is, big, really big, bad, truly big. Why don't you get on this guy's back, and then you can throw me your axe. And he started laughing. He goes, okay. And then his friend looked at him and said, no, I was just kidding.
Too late, I've already done it.
Exactly. So I gave him some penalties, and he aced like 3 times over or something. I managed with the penalties to still land amazingly well, and did his strike, threw the axe back up. So you're talking managed to throw something 20 feet or something like that. And the guy, again, hanging on a stalactite, reaching out to grab an axe, and I'm giving him penalties and making them spend bennies, and
yay!
Bennies are awesome. So making them spend bennies, and he still managed to do it. He also aced multiple times and was able to grab it. So they were really playing up the idea.
Was it Jerry Meyer? He keeps on acing those rolls.
Yeah, so they were really hamming it up and playing the idea. Well, they're orcs, so they're sort of fearless, and they're these big guys, and they're willing to just stick their necks out there. And at the same time, we had somebody else who was sort of passive. Not passive to the extent of not going to defend themselves, but sort of passive, not going to be actively engaging in combat if they have an option. But when they realize that they don't have an option, they're in. So it was pretty neat to have these things come out in a play session and work, just play out work.
So, from a campaign point of view, of looking at long-term and plot point campaigns and things, what kind of story arcs could people be looking forward to? What kind of campaigns could game masters be looking forward to tell through Retribution?
All right, so I think both of us probably have some ideas because Bob and I GM very differently. So let me tell you a couple of things from my perspective that I can see for some plot point campaigns that people could enact. And then have Bob give his ideas, because like I said, we definitely GM 2 different ways. So for me, I see, because one huge part of this world is that it was 50 years after the Great Betrayal, a huge war that was a civil war. So one thing you could do in terms of a plot point campaign is have a political adventure. You could have it be something that you are part of a group that keeps finding themselves in between the people who are starting to reestablish government in Agador. Because this is an island nation that's about the size of New Zealand, so you're not talking just a small space.
Mm-hmm.
So the government was gone. There was sort of something like an interim government that evolved, and now 50 years later there's some real effort to make an actual structure and to revive Agador so that it's as great as it was before the war, and all these strange extraplanar entities and whatnot coming in. So a plot point campaign could revolve around that. It could be that you are trying to make your way through the ranks so that you have your own political power, or it could be that you want to be sort of the shadows that work beneath the surface and work with people who are dealing with political intrigue. Or you can go completely a different way. You could be someone who is, a group of people who are trying to help fix this tear, help actually finally get rid of the vortex, so that once and for all, these things can't just bleed through and that it's more difficult to summon them. So you could go a totally different route. You could have nothing to do with the politics. You could be like, an average citizen who just happens to be subject to the, things of politics and have nothing to do with it actively, but instead be working for the greater good of, let's try to get this vortex stopped, because it moves around and it's not like it's just over one place. It travels, and when you have something as big as New Zealand, that's a lot of traveling that this vortex can do and a lot of havoc it can wreak. So those are two different styles of campaigns, whether they were plot point driven or just however you choose to create your campaign, that you could do just from my perspective. So Bob, I'm sure, has some other ideas, so I will turn it over to him to give his few cents worth.
Bob, what epic tales do you have in your head?
I don't know so much epic tales. I mean, I kind of like, when I was thinking of the setting and doing it, I wanted to stick with Savage Worlds basic rules as close as possible and not hugely modify them, because it's an island, and I figured, well, maybe you want to instead of having, playing a whole new world, you want to take this island nation and the whole setting and stick it into your own homebrew environment and add it to an existing campaign is something that they can go do. As the island's having troubles, I mean, they need heroes, to come help them, and then you introduce a whole new set of skills and edges. Or of course you can play it standalone in its own setting and do things like, are you going there to be ghost hunters or heroes to resolve problems, or while this is a war-torn place, there's a lot of old cities and villages and mines and stuff that are abandoned or very, very unprotected at the moment. We can go for loot and plunder. There's so there's a lot of different little things you can kind of make the game as, it's like, oh, maybe it's a case where one of the players is a spirit who wants to get your a body back, or resolve something. So they play around helping this one of the party members, kind of figure out how to get rebound to the body, or to figure out what happened, what killed them, as like a murder mystery or stuff like that. So there's a number of different ways. Just we have plunder and looting and plundering. You can have, heroes, high fantasy heroes. You can, a lot of different ways you can do it.
Cool. So when we go to your Kickstarter page, people are wanting to get into this. What do they need to play the game? And what are your favorite levels of pledging for what is offered?
Okay, so they need two things. They need Savage Worlds, core rules. Doesn't really matter which edition, just grab one. And so that's the first thing they need. Second thing they need is at least the setting guide PDF. As for my favorite tiers, anything that says -legacy. The reason I like anything that says -legacy is because we are inviting people to participate in the finalization of the book if they are at a legacy tier, whether it's the Unjailer Legacy, which is the PDF plus $20 to get you the Legacy playtest kit, or all the way up to our Inheritance Legacy, which is, I think, $150. So anything that says Dash Legacy is my favorite. The reason is because we want people to get involved and put a little bit of a stamp on it, too. The Legacy playtest kit allows the GM to have an advanced copy of the rough manuscript. This is unedited, so I haven't gone through it and changed all of the misspellings or typos or anything like that just yet. So it's the unedited manuscript. It is enough information for them to be able to do a play test of 1 or 2 sessions, up to them. They get the whole thing. They're getting the rules. This is not an excerpt of anything. It's the actual manuscript just before we finalize things and before I've done editing, layout, and illustration. So aside of that, though, they've got permission to provide that rough manuscript to their immediate players, not for mass distribution, but for play test. And they will have a sheet telling them how we're looking for them to run a play test. They'll have a feedback form to provide that. And here's one of my favorite parts about it. We're asking the GM to have their players and themselves submit up to 6 characters that they choose to either tweak from the pre-generated characters that they'll get, or create all new from the edges and hindrances and everything that we've got in the manuscript, or that they could choose to create some sort of location and give us some cool things within the location that then actually become things that are either canon to the setting or are offered as part of the pre-generation characters in the Legacy, which is Retribution Legacy, is a compendium that we are putting together based on the entries we get from everybody who's at the Legacy tier. So the more Legacy backers, the more characters and locations we get that aren't in the core setting book.
The second level of canon they get to come up with.
Basically, yeah. So, of course, we have to make sure that it fits within the setting and that there's no copyright issues or anything like that. We don't want someone really naming a character off of Stranger Things, for example. So we have to make sure that there's no copyright issues and it fits and that it works well. But that's one of the things I'm very excited about, and I'm happy to say that we have 9 backers at the Legacy levels.
Nice.
So that means we are actually guaranteeing a certain number of entries per Legacy level, just on the off chance that for whatever reason people don't take advantage of sending us those characters or locations. But those are minimums. So the more of those people actually do this, the bigger that compendium is going to be. And it's being offered free to all of the backers who qualify, so it's pretty much everybody from digital up.
Very cool. And Bob, what are your favorites that you have of your levels?
Well, I'm looking forward to having more people play test it, because I will continuously tweak rules forever, and which will drive Vicky crazy when she gets in there.
Yes,
So,
it does.
It gives me a chance to kind of see some more feedback up front, so that I can decide whether, okay, I don't like that rule, I want to remove it or change it, and also occasionally there's sometimes people come up with really interesting things that they want to add, and that's a really great, I want to add that as a new hindrance, or I want to add that as a new edge or something. It's so there's opportunities to see more, just get mine for ideas, and but get feedback and be able to make changes so that it works better for everybody around.
Cool. And for the stretch goals, that's the big thing for the Kickstarters. What cool stuff can people get in on for the Kickstarter that will make it completely worth their while to jump in and buy it now?
So one thing is, I have recruited a fantastic slate of Savage Worlds licensees and freelancers to provide us different spine tinglers, which is what we're calling our one-sheet adventures. So we have people like Eric Lamoureux, who's actually from the One Will Die podcast, and he's been doing some work with Just Insert Imagination in Fabled Environments. He's written for us for Savage Insider, so he's going to be, he's our first one whose stretch goal's been unlocked for, well, about probably the last 15 days. So it's been unlocked almost from the beginning. So he's on Kevin Rohan from Silver Griffin Games. He's already unlocked. Let's see, we've also got Jim Davenport from Dragon Lair. So actually, I should check that, make sure I've got it didn't reverse those. We've got Jim, and John. So all in my head. So we've got a bunch of folks who are either licensees or freelancers. Most of them are actually licensees. We just had Karen Seabolt from Evil Beagle Games, who she was a surprise because that's one of the other things I've done. Besides the things you can see on the image, we've got a couple of stretch goals where no one knows what the triggers are. So these are surprise stretch goals. And she just got unlocked for a location she's going to be bringing. So there's
her part of the island.
Right, yeah. So that'll be something that she's put in. There's just lots of little things like that. One of the things I'm really shooting for is a cast of characters from the folks at Warning Label. So cast of characters would be, I think, something that folks really enjoy, because those cast of characters, they're cards, and you're able to use those as pre-gen characters, or you can use them as allies, or you can use them as NPCs. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with those. And it's perfectly possible that within that cast of characters, there might be a few extra planar entities that you have little cards for, so that's not just the nice creatures. It could be some other things as well. So really excited about having all of these, these mini adventures written by familiar names from the Savage Worlds community. As part of our project, I'm really honored that so many of these people said yes. So I think that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to is, keep revealing those names and what levels people are doing, and and there's at least one who's going to be doing more than one Spine Tingler, and I've got another who said, well, hey, if there's any of those surprise goals that are still left, I'd like slotted in for those too. So those are the things that I think people certainly would benefit from. Also, there's a possibility that if we get even farther, that we might have a couple of surprise accessories that we might be able to put together. And since they're going to be surprises, I'm going to not mention specifically what I have in mind, but a lot of other things that we have revealed that I think people should be excited about.
Very cool. And now, and Rob, what are your thoughts on the stretch goals? What's got you most excited?
Well, I kind of leave that up to Vicky, because I'm more of the nervous, like, I want to make sure that, stretch goals, I don't want to, if we offer too much, I'll make it, deliver or something. So, I'm always afraid of that. But so I let Vicky kind of drive that. And, whatever she comes up with, she's generally right. So.
So let's go for the final push. Why, in 2 minutes or less, should people be backing Retribution? What is this for? Who are they for? How do people know that this is the game they've been waiting for?
Well, one thing is to come to them and see the different comments that people have made. We've had a lot of really interesting commentary. People really have liked the idea of spiritual combat, that there is a mechanic that deals with it, that's not merely physical combat. So it provides a different way of handling something that still is completely in sync with Savage Worlds' core rules. So that's one thing that we've heard feedback on that people have really liked, that they felt was different. Another thing for them to consider is, again, if they like the immersion of something that's supernatural. This is a supernatural fantasy. This isn't just fantasy with a couple supernatural things in it. It's definitely a marriage of the two tropes, if you will. So if you like fantasy, if you like supernatural, this is a marriage. It's there, and to my knowledge, there's not another setting that marries those two particular kinds of gameplay. So that's why I feel like you should come in. And it's also extremely versatile. You can port it into another setting. I had somebody say that, you know, this would be great with 50 Fathoms because we have a pirate area. And that's something that somebody else said. So they were thinking of that. Then we have folks that are thinking, oh, well, you know, we've got horror settings. We can put this in our horror setting. So its versatility is definitely a reason to get in on it.
Cool. And Rob, your reason for why people need to get this game?
Well, it's tradition. I kept it as close to traditional fantasy, so it's familiar to everybody, but it is portable. But it's not a setting that can easily be ported into. I kept like the world descriptions vague, so that it can easily just pull out the main bulk of the setting and just drop it into your own brew campaign. And also, there's rules. You can become playing a ghost.
Can you slime people?
Yeah, if you, I might be an edge. I might have to add that. I like the idea.
Yes. Cool. The game is Retribution. How many days do we have left on the Kickstarter?
18.
18 days. Folks, head on over to Kickstarter. Look for Retribution. Real easy to find on Kickstarter. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Rob, for joining us. And thank you, Kitty, for joining the show.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been a great time.
Thank
No
you.
problem. And